Phase 2 of the Great Plumbing Overhaul for Epiphany is, again, a lot of work, but it's really going to improve our standard of living and convenience, which is, we live here forever, so let's make it convenient. Let me give you an overview of what we're getting into. We have a water strainer right there. Now that brings raw water in from a seacock, which is down there. And that brings ocean water into the boat, strains out the seaweed, and it goes to a raw water pump on the engine, which circulates through a heat exchanger back there and out the exhaust to cool the engine. Now we need salt water because we want to put a saltwater washdown system on the back of the boat. So we're going to tap into this line and build a manifold right here so that we can provide salt water to the engine, salt water to the water maker because it needs seawater to make fresh water, and salt water to a second diaphragm pump, which is going to go under the sink where you see me doing all the freshwater plumbing, and that's going to pump salt water to this spray nozzle at the sink so we can wash dishes with salt water. It'll pump water to the back of the boat, salt water flush for the toilet, and we'll put up on the bow of the boat near the anchor locker saltwater spray hose for washing the anchor. And on the back of the boat here, we're going to put a saltwater spray nozzle for cleaning fish and washing the back of the boat. And in addition to that, we're putting a freshwater spigot out here in the helm of the boat for washing our diving gear and keeping it fresh. So let's get to work on this. And first stage will be replacing this hose with something a little sturdier and this black rubber stuff. It's on the suction side, it's not pressure. And put in a valve and manifold system so that we don't suck air into the engine or any of the other components when we use them. So we'll get started on that. Like I said, everything's done in stages. So this section of bilge between the engine compartment now has 1, 2, 3 half-inch lines, and it runs through the bilge area. Those other big hoses are 2 whale pumps for hand pumping and a bilge pump. And we've got 1, 2, the 3 ends are in here. So the next phase, since this line's going to be a freshwater line going out to the helm for washing dive gear, is I'm going to tie it in to the freshwater system here and put a valve so I can always isolate that, so I never have to disturb my kitchen water if I have problems with the faucet out there or anything like that. So step by step. And there we go. That'll be the line that I showed you come through the bilge going back to the engine compartment. And it's going to be routed to the stern of the boat. And we'll put a faucet in and put a freshwater hose for washing dive gear. So we've got a shut-off valve to keep it isolated should we have any problems downstream. And it doesn't affect the kitchen circuit or the bathroom circuit. They're separate circuits. Sounds like a plan. This is my saltwater manifold creation. So we'll bring salt water from the strainer in through here. Either one of these can be the drops for salt water to the kitchen, salt water to the water maker, and then this goes to the engine. And I've put shut-off valves to isolate the systems.
Hello.
So that they're independent of each other. And I don't ever want to suck any air into the engine. So if I'm ever working on these systems,
That's me.
You know, I can isolate them from the engine circuit. And to keep from sucking anything back from the engine, just in case, when I'm running my water maker or generally sitting at anchor, I'll leave the salt water shut off to the engine.
Well,
our saltwater manifold is installed. We've got it secured. So when we operate the valves, it doesn't put any tension on the hoses. We've already hooked up the hose going under the sink down here through the bilge. It's going to hook to the saltwater pump. Now we need to hook the inlet, which we're going to replace this hose that goes to the raw water pump. And you can see it needs replaced anyway. It's got some blistering here. And we'll run it to here and from here to here. The manifold is now plumbed into the raw water strainer and plumb back into the engine. So let's go start the engine. No reasons for it not to pump water, but a confirmation. Just discovered a small problem with this configuration. When I go to put the steps back on, the reinforcing angle for the step right here, so you get a better view of it right here, hits this hose and puts a kink in it. So what we're going to do to keep from kinking this hose is we'll put a little loop here and turn this fitting down and give us clearance for that. All right, take 3 and I like it. I know you're saying, what about take 2? Well, take 2 was just straight across and down and back up, and it kept kinking. Wasn't even worth showing. So what we've done is put a 90 here, so we got a nice gentle loop. I've primed the hoses. Everything's full of water. I'm gonna start the engine, make sure she's pumping, and then continue on with installing the saltwater pump. Okay, we're going to test run the engine, make sure we got water flow. Our exhaust is down there. First mate Gordon's going to start the engine. Crank her up. There she goes. Been a while, probably 6 months since we started it, so not a bad thing. Keep her lubed up, and I can see, can you see water speeding out the exhaust? The swim platform kind of shields it, you know, because the exhaust is right underneath that bracket. But she be spitting exhaust water, and that tells me the plumbing system's fine. Now she's got all the air out of the system. Look at her spit. 110% happy. The engine saltwater side is performing perfectly. Oh, yoga time. We've got the saltwater pump assembled. It's got a 50 mesh strainer on it. So we're going to mount it underneath the sink, kind of central in the boat. And this will be the suction line. Got a little bit extra there, so we'll trim it to fit so this hose fits over there in the corner for a cutout in the floor. And just position her, you get an idea where she's going to be at. You can see the strainer, and we'll have room over here to 90 down and put valves and connections for the other saltwater items below it. Saltwater pump is installed and plumbed to the sink spray nozzle. We'll expand upon that to provide salt water elsewhere to the boat, but that's the core of the system. So now we got to wire it. We're going to use a new hot wire coming off the panel, but we'll tap into the common ground. We'll get our power off of the switch for the freshwater pump, and we'll jump off of it install a new toggle switch that I got somewhere so that the systems are independent electrically. So if I need to service or work on either system, you can turn one off, turn the other off, but I'll use this as a source of power because it's fused through the panel. Now, with the flick of a switch, turn the salt water on and wash all the dishes to your heart's content. Use all the water you want, and then spritz them off with a little fresh water